While I've played Melee competitively for several years, Smash 4 is still a game I've enjoyed casually with my friends and family. And even though Melee is a clear favorite, with a few changes, Smash 4 could become much more appealing to me as a competitor. So, when they announced Smash 5, I was incredibly excited to see what this new game has to offer, and with the E3 Invitational fast approaching, I thought I'd outline a few things that I'd like to see in Smash 5 from the perspective of someone who's hoping to play the game primarily as a competitor rather than a casual player. And before I get into it, I'm not looking for a Melee clone, so please watch the video before jumping to conclusions. Number 1. Low lag aerials. One of the huge advantages of L canceling in Melee is that it allows you to string together creative combos by lowering the end lag of a player's aerial attacks. In doing so, it raises the skill ceiling of Melee so that a player can defeat their opponent with high quality technical execution alone. Unfortunately, while I believe a high skill ceiling is crucial to creating a great esport, L canceling is far from a perfect system. While L canceling was directly programmed into Melee and Smash 64, it wasn't an intuitive technique in the slightest. As a result, newer players who pick up Melee are immediately at a disadvantage if they don't understand L canceling or have the technical skill required to perform it. Furthermore, L canceling is definitely one of the main contributors to hand pain in my opinion, as having to click the L or R buttons repeatedly can strain your fingers due to the GameCube controller's design. While I love Melee and have no problems with L canceling, I'm not sure I agree with bringing the technique back if its only purpose is to raise the overall skill ceiling of the game. To demonstrate why, I want to bring up a similar discussion around the design changes of another amazing esport in my opinion, StarCraft Brood War and StarCraft 2. For those who are not familiar, the very basic explanation is this. When StarCraft 2 was first released, it introduced several changes that objectively made the game easier than StarCraft 1. For example, your workers would now automatically manage mining instead of having to individually select where your workers should go. Similarly, better pathing thanks to newer technology meant that you could send a group of units to attack and not have to worry as much about them getting stuck or confused along the way. Many players worried that making these changes hurt the overall game because the gap between pro players and amateurs was narrowed. Now, 8 years later, we have a bit more perspective on the effect of these changes. While StarCraft 2 is arguably easier than StarCraft 1, it's still a game with a near infinite skill ceiling. Because of this, the game has an established pro scene of players who continue to push the limits of what we thought possible for a real-time strategy game, or RTS. L canceling is similar to these changes in my opinion. While it does lower the skill ceiling, assuming you focus on other areas, the skill ceiling should be plenty high to begin with. On the flip side, removing L canceling will help new players adjust to a game that may have been too intimidating for them if it was left in. It's easy to become impatient with new players, but there are plenty of games I've decided not to get into purely because the skill barriers seem too high for me to enjoy it immediately. Plus, even if you made L canceling automatic in Melee, most players would still not be able to perform the complex combos that they see the pros doing, and there would be plenty of other things to focus on in terms of improving their overall game. As it is now, I wouldn't remove L canceling from Melee, but for a new game, I'd be happier seeing something with aerials that aren't particularly laggy, so that you can combo your opponent in unique ways without having to worry about hand pain or alienating new players. Number 2. Dash dancing. One of my biggest complaints with Smash 4 by far is its movement. I actually enjoy the overall pacing of Smash 4's neutral game, but the movement options for me left a lot to be desired. Whiff punishing moves by dashing in and out of your opponent's range is something I've loved from Melee. As a Melee player, it felt really strange to not be able to use my character's movement in that way while playing Smash 4 or Brawl. What makes dash dancing truly a great addition to Smash 5 in my opinion is the fact that it raises the skill ceiling without alienating newer players. While I love Melee's unique mechanics, I recognize that they can be intimidating to those who don't understand them at first, and that can turn off players who just want to play the game casually. However, something as simple as dashing away from the range of your opponent's attacks adds a ton of nuance and depth to the neutral game, while still being pretty easy to understand for players of any skill level. Number 3. Directional air dodges. As I said before, my favorite aspect of Melee is its movement, and a huge part of that comes from the ability to air dodge in either direction to slide backwards or forwards, or even in place. This is commonly known as a wave dash or wave land. Unlike dash dancing, I do actually think wave dashing can be kind of alienating to players that are new to Smash, but I think that's largely due to a bad reputation. Prior to knowing anything about competitive Melee, wave dashing was presented to me as a glitch or unintended bug within the game. People acted as if this one technique fundamentally broke the game, when in reality it's just an ability to slide backwards or forwards. I think if wave dashing was presented as a technique within the game, especially if it was covered in the in-game tutorial, public perception of wave dashing would be radically different. And to be honest, even if the addition of wave dashing did alienate new players, its positive contributions to movement and the overall skill ceiling of the game are just too good to leave behind in my opinion. Wave dashing and wave landing add so many nuances to both the punish game and the neutral game, and introduce a ton of creativity overall to Melee as a whole. So even something as simple as run up wave dash back feels so satisfying to pull off, and I'd love to experience that feeling in Smash 5. Number 4. Changes to ledge invincibility. While there are many things that I absolutely love about Melee, ledge invincibility isn't one of them. At its worst, refreshed ledge invincibility allows for a player to stall on the ledge rather than engaging in active play with their opponent. In the worst case scenario, this introduces the need for a ledge grab limit, and in the best case scenario, it results in a metagame that favors characters that can abuse this invincibility in some way. Don't get me wrong, it's satisfying to pull off an invincible up smash off the ledge with Fox, but I'm not convinced that makes for a better game. I love the nuanced options and gameplay that occurs around the edge, but I don't think the ability to refresh invincibility positively contributes to the game. In terms of solutions, I think keeping the existing Melee ledge system minus the ability to refresh invincibility over and over by repeatedly grabbing the ledge could be good, but I'm not sure how that would work from a practical perspective in terms of coding and that kind of thing. As I understand, Smash 4's system requires you to land on stage to regain the possibility for ledge invincibility, and something like a hack stash might be able to abuse that. If it came down to it, I'd even be willing to accept the Smash 4 ledge system, even though I'm not a huge fan of it. While I don't love ledge trumping, I think it had a positive impact on the casual community and still allows you to edgeguard your opponent, which is the most important thing to me. Number 5. Competitive support, or stages in online play. Despite a huge amount of stages released in Smash 4, the number of viable stages for competitive play was actually pretty small. I personally think stage variety is a huge part of what makes a game fresh and exciting, so it was disappointing to see Smash 4 get that wrong in so many ways. When they announced the Omega option, it honestly felt like Sakurai believed all competitive players played only on Final Destination, which felt like a patronizing attempt to appeal to a community that him and his team didn't care to take the time to understand. Moving forward with Smash 5, it would be awesome to see some simple, fresh stages to choose from that work primarily for competitive play. In the same vein, it would be incredible to see Nintendo invest in a proper ladder system that rivals other top-tier esports titles. The current ladder system in Melee netplay right now is quite limited and doesn't measure a player's skill anywhere near as accurately as more established ladders in bigger esports. This is almost entirely due to factors outside of Smash Ladder's control, so I don't blame them at all. But if Nintendo could create a tiered system, i.e. something with bronze, silver, gold, platinum, etc., it would really send the message that they support competitive players. These kinds of systems are great ways to measure one's personal progress as a competitor, which is something that Smash as a whole is currently missing in my opinion. Tournaments really only do a great job of measuring the skills of players at the top, which is unfortunate considering most of the player base would be in bronze or silver on Smash Ladder. I'd love to see this changed, but I won't hold my breath. Number 6. A similar amount of characters. Okay, so while this might shock people, I personally think that Smash 4 actually had too many characters as a competitive player in its current state, so the idea of adding more seems kind of intense to me. While I'm all for character diversity, I'm definitely more of a quality over quantity kind of guy when it comes to the competitive side of Smash. As a casual player, I really feel like the more the merrier, but as a competitor, I'd much rather have 20 well-balanced, competitively viable characters than 50 characters where the balance is all over the place. Now, I'm not suggesting Smash 4 was crazy imbalanced, I'm just saying 58 characters feels like more than enough for me at this time. Assuming Smash 5 adds a similar amount of characters, it's possible for us to get over 75 characters total, which not only seems insanely difficult to balance, it also seems like way too much work when it comes to learning matchups. With that said, if they did have to add new characters, I'm actually quite excited to see the new Splatoon characters, but the ones on screen could be really cool as well. Number 7. Bring back the real FALCO. What the f*** were they thinking? Number 8. Remove Rage. Last but not least, we have Rage. Rage is a strange mechanic to me. It feels like the main reason they introduced Rage was to buff heavier characters like Bowser, who's been a low-tier character consistently across every Smash title. It also seems like they did it to introduce potential for comebacks as well. Unfortunately, it just overcomplicates things in my opinion, and can potentially have the opposite effect when it comes to comeback potential. Rage can make it so the player who's up a stock at high percent gets even more ridiculous combos than they would otherwise, and it's overall not a great way to solve the heavy character problem in my opinion. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what they should do to fix that problem in general, so I'd love to hear other people's ideas of how to balance heavier, slower characters in Smash 5. And that's it for this video. I'm super excited for the Invitational, and I'd love to hear what you guys are interested in seeing, so let me know more in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, comment, and give a thumbs up. You can also support my channel on Patreon. Even $1 a month goes a long way towards helping the channel. With that in mind, I'd like to give a shout out to Andy, Kyle Tang, and Ryan Binstock, and all the other patrons who support me. That's it for this week, and I'll see you guys next time.